Have you ever stopped to think about how upside down the world seems? Lies have become truth. Theft is seen as cleverness. Violence has become common news. People have forgotten what is right, because now everything seems relative. Everything goes nothing matters, but has it always been like this? Was the world always a stage for tragedies, pain, betrayal, and confusion? The truth is, no. All of this has a beginning. Once everything was perfect, pure, without fear, death, or evil. And if you really want to understand how we got to this chaos, you have to go back to the very beginning, to the first garden, the first choice, to the story that changed the destiny of humanity. So, close your eyes. Imagine a world without tears, and come with me. Let's travel to the beginning of that story, a story that began like this.
In the beginning, God created everything perfect. And the pinnacle of creation was the human being. Adam was formed from the dust of the earth and received the breath of the Creator. But God himself said, "It is not good for man to be alone." So, from Adam's side, God formed Eve to be his wife, his suitable helper, someone to complete his mission to govern all things and care for the garden. The first family was born there. And it was there that the enemy launched his strategy. It wasn't just to provoke disobedience. He wanted to wound the foundation, the structure of the kingdom, the family, which has always been God's perfect plan. He knew that by destroying the first family, he could destroy all generations. And that's exactly what he did. God had given Adam and Eve a clear command. You may eat freely from every tree in the garden, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you must not eat, for on the day you eat of it you will surely die. But the serpent, cunning and deceitful, entered the story, and she went directly to Eve. Not because Eve was weak, but because the serpent knew that by inverting the order of authority, she could confuse the purpose. She planted the seed of doubt and asked Eve, "Did God really say, 'Are you not allowed to eat from any tree?'" Eve replied correctly, "We may eat the fruit of the trees in the garden. But from the tree in the middle of the garden, God said, 'Do not eat from it, nor touch it, lest you die.'" But the serpent lied, "You will not surely die. God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." The serpent used the oldest weapon, the desire to be more. God created Eve to be a helper, but the serpent convinced her to desire to lead, to take control, to seek limitless autonomy. Eve saw the fruit. It was desirable to the eyes and pleasing to give understanding, and she ate it. And after eating, she gave the fruit to Adam, who silently, passively accepted it without questioning. There, Adam failed as the leader of his home. He did not protect his wife. He did not confront the wrong. He simply gave in. And in that silent act, sin entered the world. Order was broken. Government was corrupted, and the serpent laughed with joy because she knew she had wounded the first family, and with it, God's very plan. And then In that instant the fruit was bitten. Something invisible happened. The eyes of Adam and Eve were opened, but not in the way they expected. What was once purity became shame. What was once freedom became fear. What was once intimacy with God became distance from the Creator. They tried to hide and covered themselves with leaves to conceal what, until then, had brought no shame. But there was no leaf that could hide what had entered their hearts: sin, separation, spiritual rupture, and God, who used to walk with them in the garden, came to meet them and said, "Adam, where are you?" God knew where they were, but the question wasn't geographical, it was spiritual. Adam was no longer the same, Eve was no longer the same, and Eden would never be the same again. The consequences were immediate, and God declared judgment upon the serpent. "Because of what you have done, cursed are you among all animals, and I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her offspring. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." There, God was already announcing that although the enemy had wounded humanity, the woman's offspring, Jesus Christ, would crush the serpent's head. But until then, the marks of the fall would be felt in all creation and through all generations until the end of time. Eve would feel pain in childbirth. Adam would have to labor to extract sustenance from the earth. And marriage, which was once companionship, would now become a battleground of disputes, blame, and conflict. God had declared the punishment over Eve, saying she would long for her husband and he would rule over her, not as the original plan, but as a consequence of disorder. And the war between genders was born there. Then, the worst happened. They were expelled from the garden forever. They were separated from the source of life. Sin entered the human DNA, and with it, death for eternity and expulsion from Eden. At the gates of Eden, God placed cherubim armed with flaming swords to guard the way to the tree of life. The door had closed. Man, who was created to rule over all things under heaven, now walked as an exile. Woman, who was created to be a helper, now faced pain, conflict, and oppression. And the serpent knew that chaos had been installed. But even in the face of the Adam fall, God did not abandon humanity. He himself made garments of skin for them. A silent act of love, but also a sign that from that moment on, blood would need to be shed to cover their shame. Yet, even wounded, humanity was not without hope. Right there, the story of redemption began.